Hello, everyone, and welcome to another installment of TED Excellence, the show in which I try to discover what is the correct way to instill diversity and inclusion into the corporate world. And I come to you live from my Corona bunker on the moon with Dog Cat Fox, a Pepperjack, and all of you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday. Wonderful Wednesday. Yeah, that whole wonderful whatever day it is thing. I kind of stole that, or at least the theme of it, from an old George Carlin record that my parents owned, because it was one of those, like whole comedy concert on a record deal. And I have no idea what the bit was. I don't remember anything else about it except that he was playing a radio announcer. And he says something to the effect of, "Thank you for tuning in to WINO, Wonderful Wino." And I just thought that was funny. There's your little piece of trivia for today. But hello, everyone. Yes, we're back again with an interesting one, I hope. I really hope today. I'll get into that momentarily. But who is joining me today for this wonderful journey into education and enlightenment? Well, that would be Tuck Smith. Hello. Matt Barnes. Hello. Zalbla. Hello. Dr. Keeve. Hello. Asian Hippie, hello. Some Namnyon Nation, hello. Mr. Tickle Trunk, hello. Mike R, hello. Debate Fly, hello. Black Belt for Christ, hello. Check Your Logic, hello. Dina B, hello. Zeke Weiss, hello. And then chat jumped, because of course it does. Nathaniel Taylor, hello. Roger Reynolds, hello. Scanner Daffley, hello. Legit Low Talker, hello. Who else is here? Tuxman, I said hi to you. Pinkalo the Driving Ape, hello. Said hello to you. Said hello to you. I said hello to all of you already. Senior staff reporter and chief Florida correspondent, Colleen Bernier. Zero the Hero 909, hello. Robert Pincus, hello. Megan Ring, hello. Mike Savage, Blarg. Corey Suzuki, hello. And Raul Aguilar, hello. Oh, sorry. Raul Aguilar is not here. Very well. Leo Prime 75, hello. If I missed anyone, I apologize, but them's the breaks with the speed of the chat box. So what do we have on deck today? Well, a Viror of Ashmedai. Hello. Well, that's not what's on deck per se, but the subject of today's video is why corporate diversity programs fail and what to do instead. Now, I find this an intriguing title because, well, I have some experience looking at corporate diversity programs, for those of you that don't know. And secondly, given how often corporate diversity programs are not explained, like in their actual workings and their mechanisms, if I have a speaker who's going to tell me what's wrong with them before telling me what should be done, then perhaps she will explain to me how they work to begin with. Otherwise, she's going to have a hard time making a sales pitch for a better idea if she doesn't explain how the current idea is flawed. So maybe it's kind of a roundabout, sideways way of learning things I wouldn't otherwise be told by other speakers. I don't know. I haven't watched it, so we'll find out together. And today's bingo card, I kind of set the poll on the Twitter machine off by like a half hour, so I don't think at this time the poll's actually done. But at the time I looked at it last, it was card A, everyone. A as in apple. So get your bingo cards ready. Links are in the description to the bingo cards. Let's see, a couple other hellos here. The Mithril King, hello. Grizilla, hello. Frosted Glass, hello. Atheist Icon, hello. I think that's everybody so far. If I missed you, I apologize. But we have to get into it. So as usual, I will start off with a couple of seconds for sound test. You guys tell me if you can hear it. This talk clocks in at just over 14 minutes, so it's kind of your average TEDx. And here we go.
In 2018.
In 2018, it was a very good year. You guys hear that? I have that all set up correctly, don't I? Tell me that you heard that. Otherwise, me singing that lyric wouldn't make any sense at all. Dr. Keeve says, sounds good. Well, that's all I need to hear. If Dr. Keeve hears it, everybody hears it. All right, so in 2018...
2 black men went to a Starbucks.
Okay. Uh-huh.
to wait for a business associate.
Yes, that's what they did.
But when they asked to use the bathroom, the
Mhm.
manager ordered them to leave.
Oh,
They refused.
yeah.
He called the police,
Uh-huh.
and the video went viral.
Yes.
Amidst an avalanche of bad publicity,
Mm-hmm.
Starbucks closed all stores across the country for 4 hours of diversity training.
Yeah, how did that go? I'm sure Starbucks has had no problems or complaints since then, right?
And so baristas were handed workbooks with prompts like, what makes me, me, and you?
Yeah, I wonder if she's going to bring up the hashtag race together. You remember that part? I forget who instilled that into the company for a time. It might have been the CEO. What's his name? But part of their initiative was to write on the coffee cups hashtag race together. If I remember correctly, the language was something to the effect of, in order to spur conversations between baristas and their customers about diversity and inclusion and so on. I wonder if she'll mention that little nugget of brilliance they came up with.
Makes me, and you, and understanding our bias from
Yes.
colorblind to color brave.
Colorblind to color brave? Color brave. Oh, if she uses that some more in this, that might be new buzzword buzz. I mean, it's new to me. I don't know if it's something she's going to make a selling point. Color brave. Okay.
This made newspapers across the country, and
It made newspapers, or it appeared in. I'm sorry, I'm being too literal.
arguably that was the goal. Look, everyone, we're solving our diversity problem.
Yes, somebody in the chat mentioned bias. Yes, Dr. Key, bias. Let's go to the bingo card, free space, and I'm going to circle unconscious bias, just because. I mean, that's effectively what we're talking about here. Where did I put it on the A card? I got to find it. Where'd you go? I am blind to my own card, apparently. Really? I just can't seem to find it. Microaggressions unconscious. There it is. Okay. Right, diagonal from the free space. Okay. Diversity and inclusion. Has she said that yet? Sorry, my brain was all over the place. Has she said diversity and inclusion? We'll probably get there, if not already.
The assumption, though, was that you could address structural racism with an earnest conversation about our feelings.
Uh-huh.
My take, give me a break.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, then what is the cure then? She said diversity problem. Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure we'll get there regardless. So diversity and inclusion, I will circle as well on the board. So we have diversity and inclusion, microaggressions, unconscious bias, and free space. Let's continue. Oh, structural racism. Systemic institutional, not yet. Let's give it some more time. See if we get more specificity.
To address structural racism,
Yes.
you need to change structures.
Oh, wow. Thanks. Okay. How do we do that?
So in the aftermath of George Floyd's death,
Yeah.
my sense is that many companies are feeling pressure to actually deliver on their diversity goals.
Yeah. And what are diversity goals? Well, classically speaking, they are percentages. They are quotas. We want to have 50-50 equity in our senior leadership, or we want our workforce to be, X percentage of this demographic by this year or something. I believe they want to reach their goals. How does that not involve selecting people on the basis of their skin color and or their gender and or whatever?
But they haven't a clue what to do.
Well, I know what they want to do, but for them to do what they want to do, they'd have to break the law, which I'm 99.9% sure many companies already have in spirit, even if you can't prove it on paper necessarily.
And that's because we spent probably close to $1 billion on diversity, But the basic tools of the diversity industrial complex, they just don't work.
The diversity industrial complex. I haven't heard that one before. I'm maybe just an aggregate. I'll circle buzz phrase by the end of this. But equity. We have equity on the board. Circling equity. Oh boy, this might be a multi-bingo one.
A one-shot bias training, it doesn't work for a really simple reason. Doing anything once won't change a company's culture.
Okay, so you should have bias training, what, every week? Every day? How often do you need to remind people to focus on skin color, to assess people on the basis of what they look like? How often do you need to tacitly accuse your workforce of being racist or sexist, just not on the surface being racist or sexist, but just because we know that reflexively you're going to be racist and sexist, let's just remind ourselves of how guilty we all are ahead of time. How often is a healthy dose of that kind of thinking in a company?
And the other basic tools, things like an employee resource group.
An ERG? Oh, I love ERGs. They create little cliques within your own company based on race and gender and orientation, which does nothing to further divide your workplace up or anything.
Or a women's initiative.
Mm-hmm.
They're fine if the problem is with the women and the people of color.
Oh.
But it's not.
Mm.
If a company faces challenges surrounding diversity, typically it's because subtle and not so subtle forms of bias are constantly being transmitted through their basic business systems.
Systems, you say? All right, systemic, institutional, circling that one. And yeah, if we hadn't already had it before, microaggressions, unconscious bias, etc. Okay, well, I see that you're still spelling out the problem. I can't wait to hear the solution.
Through hiring, through performance evaluations, through access to opportunities. So we need to stop trying to fix the women and the people of color. We need to fix the business systems.
Fix the women and people of color. Okay, I heard her start saying that. I don't honestly understand what she meant by fixing the women and people of color. Is having an ERG fixing the people of color? Is having a women's initiative fixing the women? Is that an accusation that women are inherently flawed some way? Like they need special help? Is that what she's saying? Because if that's what she's saying, then I would agree in the sense that seems a little, I don't know, benevolently condescending. But I don't necessarily think it's in a belief that they're broken, except that every company and our whole society is told that women need men's help, or people of color need white people to hand over the microphone, that kind of thing. So if the companies are just doing what they're effectively being told, that's them saying the women need to be fixed. That's them saying people of color need to be fixed. Okay. Well, again, not knowing where she's going, I'm dying to know what her proposed solution is. Maybe it'll be something good. I don't know.
And if you think about it, this makes sense, because if a company was facing challenges with sales, it wouldn't respond by holding a series of sincere conversations about how much we all value sales and put on programming for National Celebrate Sales Month and expect sales to improve.
I suppose if you're looking at diversity as simply a numbers game. I mean, if you're looking at diversity simply as a numbers game rather than a culture thing or a bias thing, which I thought is what you said was going on, if you look at diversity outcomes simply as metrics, all right, maybe that makes sense. But then the question becomes, how do you then achieve those goals mechanically?
But that's a lot of what we're doing. in the diversity context.
Uh-huh.
If we really want to tackle diversity effectively,
Mm-hmm.
we need to use the same tools businesses use to tackle any business problem.
Oh, okay. Well, can't wait to hear that. Thank you. This is Kyle. Hello, chat people and scribbles. Hello, Kyle. And thank you, tall person. I was expecting a special National Day message. If you have one, maybe it got lost in the translation or something. I'll wait a second here in case it pops up. Okay, so diversity and inclusion is a business problem like any other business problem. Yeah, tall person, I don't know what happened there. Just put your message in the chat. You don't have to do another super chat, and I will read it out. I don't know what happened there. Okay, if you're going to approach diversity and inclusion as a business problem like any other business problem, then you're going to have to what? I mean, the whole diversity inclusion problem is either A, you're not diverse enough as a company, or within your company, you're not giving opportunities or making opportunities available to more diverse people. So if you're going to handle it within the business, I don't know how else you would handle it than what I assume has to happen in other diversity initiatives, which is you give preferential treatment to people based on what they look like, which is not what you're supposed to do. But maybe our speaker has an alternative. Tall person said, or wanted to say, I wished you a happy National Chocolate Cake Day. Oh, it's Chocolate Cake Day. Because it was Cheesecake Day or some specific flavor of Cheesecake Day not too long ago. Chocolate Cake Day. When was the last time I had chocolate cake? Everything seems like so long ago now after the last year of being locked down and everything being limited and other engagements being sort of set aside. I'll have to think about that. And if I have to think about it too long, I'll go to the store and get some chocolate cake. All right, anyway.
Evidence and metrics.
Oh, evidence and metrics. Okay, well, tell me how we achieve those metrics.
And, I suspect this will come as a relief to a lot of CEOs who feel far more comfortable using those tools than they do with trying to lead a deep conversation about the inner workings of social inequality. Okay,
so you want to not change people's perspectives. You want to systemize and mechanize diversity into the institutions. So you want to establish a systemic institutional process of achieving diversity. Got it.
The first step is for us to understand what bias looks like on the ground.
Okay.
And I and my team at Work Life Law, we have been studying how bias plays out in everyday workplace interactions for well over a decade.
Oh, great. I love it. People have spent a lot of time looking at this stuff and now have for me some active examples of what constitutes on the ground bias. All right. Tell me.
And what we find is that the same patterns of bias, the same 5 patterns, they emerge over and over again.
A list? I think we have a list oncoming, guys. 5 patterns. Oh boy, tell me what the 5 patterns are.
So here's what the evidence looks like.
Okay.
The first pattern we call prove it again.
Okay.
Some groups have to prove themselves more than others.
Okay. So there are certain groups. Sorry, no. I think you mean demographics. Demographics. I think you mean demographics. Pretty sure you mean demographics, but you keep saying groups. But okay, there are some demographics that are assumed to be, I don't know, undervalued or unskilled or something, or are completely underestimated all the time because they are what they are. Okay.
This is triggered by lots of different things. It's triggered by race and gender, age, disability, LGBTQ status, even social class.
Okay. just as a matter of course in everyone? It's just there because? Do you mark off any difficulty in the workplace that is experienced by anybody who falls within one of those demographics as they're being victims of some kind of bias? How do you measure that exactly? How do you determine that?
So one study, for example, looked at callbacks offered to white men with identical qualifications but different hobbies. One resume listed things like sailing and polo, and the other resume listed things like counseling first generation, college students, and country music.
One study looked at this. Okay.
And if you can believe it, Mr. Polo, he got 12 times the number of callbacks as Mr. Country Music. Too often when we talk about privilege, we forget about class.
Oh, privilege. Privilege is on the board. Circling privilege. All right. Okay, 12 times the callbacks. 12 times, how many is 12 times? Was it 12? What study? How was the study conducted? You didn't name the study. I mean, I don't expect you to go through the entire study, but you didn't even name the study. So, okay. I'm not necessarily going to say that leaves out vital context by itself, but all the same.
The second pattern is called the tightrope, and it reflects the fact that a certain in-group of white men just need to be authoritative and ambitious.
Okay, well, I'm going to circle white supremacy because if in spirit, if not in specificity, she's already taken on the role of the problem is white people, and white people have all the control. So circling white supremacy.
In order to succeed.
Uh-huh.
But women walk a tightrope where they may be seen as abrasive if they're authoritative, but unqualified if they're not. And people of color who behave assertively often are written off as angry if they're Black, even hot-headed if they're Latinx.
Latinx. Often? How often is often? I thought we were going to be given evidence here. This isn't evidence. You said evidence and metrics. So far, your evidence has been suggestions and unnamed sources and 12 times, whatever that means. Okay.
And sometimes is untrustworthy.
Sometimes. How many times is some?
If they're Asian American.
Asian American are untrustworthy. Really? I hadn't heard that one before. Okay. Evidence? Anything? Just saying so because you say so?
The next pattern we call the tug of war, and it reflects the fact that sometimes bias against a group fuels conflict within the group.
I'm circling mind reading assumes motives. In the absence of her actually providing any evidence or something more substantial, she's just making accusations and making broad assumptions about how people operate based on race, this, that, or the other. Presumably based on the race of the person making the assumptions that she's assuming are making the assumptions. But anyway, moving on.
So, for example, if there's room for only one woman or person of color, it's entirely predictable. Women are going to be super competitive with other women, and people of color competitive with other people of color.
If there's only one... So wait, there's a company that already discriminates on the basis of race or gender for positions? Huh. Imagine that. Imagine if you had a company that had some kind of, percentage goal based on gender or race for the top spots in the company or just in general. yeah, I'm sure that would not in itself create any kind of competitive, sense or any kind of animosity towards anybody who gets a job, maybe because of what they are and not because of what they've done. Where is the scenario? I'd be really glad to know what active example scenario does she have of a company that had a spot open specifically for a woman and or a person of color. I'd like to know the name of that company. I would really, really like to know the name of that company. And probably also the EEOC would like to know the name of that company.
The fourth pattern of bias is actually the strongest form of gender bias, called the maternal wall.
Oh.
And it reflects assumptions that mothers aren't committed, probably shouldn't be, and aren't competent. Think pregnancy brain. So mothers often find they have to prove themselves yet again when they return from maternity leave. And if they do, they may be seen as bad mothers and so as bad people and disliked.
They may be seen. Okay. If somebody takes a substantial amount of time off from their career to go raise their children in some way, shape, or form, unless it's just like, I had the kid, I recovered, and now I'm back at work within like a month or something, which isn't common. It does happen, but it's not common. They are probably going to have to make up for lost time. Things keep moving without them. The world does not stay static. And if someone decides that they would rather stay at home and raise their kids than come back to work, I mean, a company has to make allowances for the possibility that someone may decide not to come back, or there may be complications that require them to be out longer. The world does not stand still because someone decides to have a kid, And that's not to say that someone should be unduly punished or something for going off and having a kid if they want to come back to their job and so on. But again, depending on the circumstances, that's really what it is here. What you're making. Can you give me an example? Give me an example, an active example. And not something from 1972 that shows how far we've come, but rather something in like the last 5 years. Can you give me that? Given all the laws that we have now that protect people who go off to be parents, right? And all the safety nets that we have in place, all the safety nets that companies independently create for such situations. Don't get me wrong, I'm not elevating corporate America to some kind of lofty position as, benevolent or something. But again, tell me how it works. Literally, give me an example.
The final pattern
That's it? That's it. You just, okay.
consists of racial stereotypes. So Asian American.
You mean like all white men control the fates of all people of color and all women in businesses? Those kind of racial stereotypes? Is that what you're talking about?
Racial stereotypes.
Yeah.
So Asian Americans again and again report that they're seen as a great match for technical skills, but lacking in leadership potential.
Where is this reported?
And our studies show that Black professionals, again and again, report really high levels of isolation and often startling forms of disrespect.
Such as, and where's your study?
And an Asian American professional may be seen as too emotional.
May be seen. So they also may not be seen.
In a discussion where, a white man behaving exactly the same way would be seen as having a career-enhancing passion for the business.
Uh-huh. Okay. When do we get to the part where you tell us what the correct way to conduct these kinds of things are? You're listing off the quote-unquote problems as you see them, or as they may exist, or how they sometimes are. All right, so what's the alternative?
And so what we find is that white women report 4 patterns of bias.
They report? So it's anecdotal. It's subjective. Okay.
Men of color also report 4.
Uh-huh.
Women of color report all 5. And
Uh-huh.
it's very substantial proportions.
Okay, what about white men? Do white men, did you go to white men to ask them what they might report of their own experiences as individuals? Did you? I mean, do you have anything to compare and contrast with at all? And if they said those things, if you had white men list off everything except for potentially maternity, unless you're going to include, father or fatherly duties and things as maternal wall stuff, because I mean, dads do play a role. Would you believe them if they reported those to you? Thank you, Pecoraro, the driving ape man, or the guy is the office know-it-all asshole. Yeah.
And among women of color, Black women report the most bias as a group.
As a demographic. You know how much you damage your credibility as someone who's saying that they're a researcher or a statistician or something when you say the wrong word, literally the wrong word for what you're talking about. And where's your control group? What did white men say? How did you evaluate their assessments of treatment versus everybody else's? Did you dismiss their complaints because of what they looked like? Did you even bother to ask? Or did you just assume that none of them applied? And if you just assumed that none of them applied, again, you've lost credibility. Thank you, Redneck Ram. It's their truth, Scribe. Quit trying to deny their truth. I know, their truth. Yeah. But she wanted to talk about evidence and metrics. Like, okay, let's talk about evidence and metrics. If that's the standard I'm to hold you to, then you have to give me a complete picture trying to avoid your own bias,
But the bottom line really is that the experience of white men as a group differs from that of every other group.
Every other demographic. Okay, how does their experience as a demographic, all white men, differ?
If a white man is a first-generation professional or LGBTQ, he may encounter bias.
So he may encounter bias, just like all the other demographics you listed may encounter bias. But
most aren't.
But most? Well, how many is most? And if they may, then how can you say that it's across the board that they won't? Like, what? Oh, come on.
These biases can have really serious negative effects.
On who? Just those you've chosen as the inherent victims? Okay, I'm circling benevolent condescension. If you're part of these demographics, you're inherently more a victim than everybody else, and etc. Okay.
There's a ton of research.
Oh, yeah. Are you gonna name any of it? If you've told us there's research, you've said there was a study, you said you've done research. There's a ton of research, really, a literal metric ton of research. Okay, tell me of some.
But here's a story that really says it all.
Oh, a story. So an anecdotal. Okay, you know what? I'm circling leaves out vital context because, fool me once, but again and again and again, she keeps referring to research and abstractions and everything else. And no, I'm willing to give a little leeway for the sake of brevity, but no. Okay, you tell me your story. Will this end up being an anecdote that probably never happened? I don't know.
We were working with one company and we spoke to a woman engineer who had found a mistake in one of the calculations of a male colleague, and she pointed it out. When she pointed it out, she was violating an unwritten rule.
She was violating an unwritten rule. Okay.
The good woman is seen as modest, self-effacing, and nice, not a mission-driven expert.
Whose unwritten rule was this?
That's why male experts in meetings exert more influence, but you know what? Female experts, they actually exert less influence than.
Depends. Okay, you know, my anecdotal examples are as weighty as this anecdotal example, but I'm not, okay.
And female non-experts do.
Yeah, okay.
And so when this engineer pointed out the mistaken calculation, she told us.
Yeah. She told you? She told you. Okay, so you didn't go to verify this at the company?
The response of her department was so massively negative that she said, now I'm just smiling a lot and bringing in cupcakes.
So she pointed out an error and her whole department was negative to her. How? What happened? And now you smile a lot and bring in cupcakes. So this person pointed out a obvious mathematical error, and so she backed down and fell upon cupcakes. What?
This company, by allowing gender bias to go unchecked.
No. Anecdote that probably never happened. No, I'm sorry. You're not giving us enough detail. I do not believe that's how any of that went down. And maybe there's a story there. I don't know. But that cursory of an explanation, no. That anecdote as told, I do not believe. I'm circling anecdote that probably never happened.
Was literally jeopardizing their mission.
Literally? Well, what is their mission? How can I assess whether... Okay, anyway.
So what's the solution?
I don't know. I've been waiting 9 minutes and 39 seconds. Okay, so you've listed off all the problems, the inherent bias, the systemic racism, the systemic sexism, the unwritten rules, the unsubstantiated research, studies, evidence, etc. Okay, all right. Okay. She's got about 5 minutes. Lamented Guide, hello. Slapper360, hello. Mr. E, hello. For those of you that I can see in the chat right now. Okay, now we're going to get to the solution. What is your solution? Here we go.
The solution is to use bias interrupters.
Bias interrupters. Are those like collars with a buzzer on it you put around people's necks? Or is it everybody having to police everybody else's language or making assumptions about people's motives and making accusations in the workplace? What is a bias interrupter?
New tools my team has developed that are evidence-based and metrics-driven.
Evidence-based. Is the evidence like the kind of evidence you've been giving us so far with the maybes and sometimes and abstracts?
And I've just told you about a lot of the evidence.
No, you didn't tell me any evidence. You didn't tell me any evidence. You offered abstractions, unnamed sources, and feelings and interpretations that you offered from individuals who say they experienced these things because they say so. And then you just kind of glossed over any reporting from white men about experiencing the similar things because they're white men. But you also decry racial stereotypes. And you don't say demographic. That really does bug me. But okay, evidence. Yeah, all the evidence.
Metrics are also super important because they help you pinpoint where things are going wrong.
Okay.
So if a company has challenges with hiring, they should be keeping track of who is in the original pool of candidates.
I don't think the word who is what you're looking for here. What is a problem in hiring? What do you mean by problem in hiring? You're not giving me a specific. Okay. What is the problem in hiring that you are attempting to solve? I can guess. I can make an educated guess as to what you see as a problem. And from your infographic here, you don't care about the who. You have not talked about the who in any of this. You have talked about the what. Don't tell me that you're worried about who is in your talent pool. That is not your concern. That is not what you would cite as a hiring problem, I'm pretty sure. But again, in the absence of more information, I can only make assumptions based on the evidence I've been provided so far by your rhetoric.
And who survives resume review? And who gets called to interview? And who survives the interview? And the reason that's important
is because obviously in this example, the company is sexist. That's the problem. The company is totes sexist.
Is because the fix, if you have a non-diverse original pool, it's totally different.
A non-diverse. What is a non-diverse pool? Define your terms, please. Define for me what is a non-diverse pool. And then define for me what is the problem in hiring that you're attempting to solve.
Then the fix, if no woman ever survives the interview, because every woman is either too witchy or too meek.
Or maybe they're not qualified. Did you ever think about that? Did you ever think about the possibility that, hey, it comes down to 3 candidates, 2 women, 1 guy. And out of the 3 people, the guy ends up having better qualifications. No. But because a woman did not survive the process, obviously sexism, right? That's your interpretation. Your immediate arrival to a conclusion is sexism. Is that evidence-based? If so, what evidence do you have that it was sexism that led to that result?
Metrics are also super important for another reason, to establish baselines and measure progress.
Okay, so if there aren't enough women by your personal desires in a particular situation, what would you suggest as a solution? Please tell me what a company should do to correct that problem. And please put it plainly.
If you use evidence and metrics, what we have found is that small tweaks can have really big effects.
Okay, tell me what the tweaks are.
So we've worked with one company, for example.
One company, for example, that we won't name or give any specificity to, but okay, it's an example.
Who asked us to look at their performance evaluations.
Performance? What does performance have to do with anything?
And when we did, we found that only 9.5% of the people of color had leadership mentioned.
Okay.
In their performance evaluations. That was 70 points lower than white women.
Okay, so this company's racist is what you're saying? All right. Thank you, Lamented Guide. Quote, survived the interview, unquote. What, are the women getting shot if they fail their job interviews or something? Very dramatic language without a whole lot of substance. Okay, so one company, which you won't name, in a business that you won't specify, in an industry that you won't say had this. And the adjective of leadership did not appear on enough people of color's resumes, or sorry, performance reviews, as compared to white women who had that on 70% of theirs. Okay. How many people of color were in this company compared to white women? How many people of color were in positions that had anything to do with leadership? I mean, if you're just a drone, what was this about evidence you were going to say again?
And that was super important because, as you can imagine, mentions of leadership predicted advancement.
I can imagine quite a bit, but I guess I'll just have to take your word for it.
And so we worked with them to do two simple things.
Okay.
First, we redesigned the performance evaluations form.
Why? What? Why? That's not okay.
And second,
What? How? No. Okay. Why and how? Let me back up. Why and how did you redesign it? What is the performance form the problem? Why is the performance form the problem? Tell me what that problem is and tell me how your redesign solved it.
we helped them develop a simple 1-hour workshop that, among other things, projected actual comments from the prior year's performance evaluations and asked people a simple question. Which of the 5 patterns of bias does this represent?
Okay, so you're going to take a comment out of context for some random performance review from a year ago, and you're going to put it to your audience to project onto this comment an inherent air of bias, and then pick one of 5 to apply it to. Even if the comment had nothing to do with bias, even if the comment was completely objective based on the person's actual performance in the company, no, we're going to assume bias because reasons? Wow, that sounds scientific. That sounds evidence-based. That doesn't sound subjective or accusatory at all. Are you going to tell us how you changed the performance form? Are you going to tell us why you changed the performance form? Did you just remove the word leadership from being allowed to be used in the performance form? What did you do? You know, if you go to a village with the intent on finding witchcraft, I bet you dollars to donuts, you'll find yourself some witchcraft.
Or is it no bias?
Well, how could you know? You would have to be a mind reader. A mind reader. Is this person making the comment out of objective evidence of the person's performance in the company? Or are they making it because they're a sexist or a racist? And what is that to prove? What is that meant to do? Okay, the exercise itself is absolute nonsense, waste of time, but what is that supposed to lead to? What conditioning is that supposed to impart upon your audience?
Just doing that, we found in year 2, 100% of the people of color had leadership mentioned.
You solved the problem! Oh my God, what a miracle! What a miracle! If you call everybody in the company racist for not putting the word leadership onto someone's performance review because they're obviously biased against people of color, well, then obviously 100% means you solved the problem. Racism's over. Wait, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me, lady? Please do not tell me you see this as some kind of win for your company or group, where you put the fear of God in everybody in that company, that at any point they could have their performance reviews reviewed and be called a racist because they didn't say someone who wasn't white had leadership potential. Oh, wow.
In their performance evaluations. You know, at this company, white women, they had a different problem.
Let me guess. They had a different problem that somehow all got resolved 100% by the time you were done with your inquisition.
Almost 20% had comments in their performance evaluations that they didn't really want to make partner. This was a partnership.
They didn't want to make partner. So wait, somebody put in their performance evaluations that they didn't want to make partner. Because they asked them? I'm confused.
And we suspected, you know, the women hadn't actually said that. It was just assumptions. And so in that 1 hour...
Well, was it or wasn't it? Did they actually say that? Were they asked about that?
Workshop, we told people, hey, don't say this unless you've actually had a conversation and then someone has told you they don't want to make partner.
Well, okay, that's... Well, okay, first off, did you actually look and say, or see, did the people actually say that? Was somebody putting that in the performance review because they had a conversation where someone indicated they weren't interested in seeking partnership? Or are you assuming that they put it in there? Are you making the assumptions, or did you actually do any investigation? I can't tell. But if someone puts into a performance review, this person says they don't want to advance, or this person says they do not want to make partner, when that person never said that, okay, legit. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't quote someone's stated intentions if they didn't actually state it. Okay. But my question to our speaker is, did you just assume that people were lying when they put that in there, or did you go investigate beforehand?
In year 2, only one woman got that comment, one woman in the entire company.
Again, is it because you went and found out that they were lying? Or did you just scare them into even possibly putting that in there on the off chance they were going to show themselves to be biased? Because you've determined that that's bad thinking or bad words to use. And then my phone beeps because I guess my phone's beeping at me. It's not work, I hope. Okay. None of this proves anything. None of this proves anything. It doesn't mean you've done away with racism or bias. It also doesn't mean that the people you talked to were inherently racist or sexist. You just came in as inquisitors. You categorized certain behaviors, actions, or comments as inherently problematic, and lo and behold, the circumstances and the occasions of those things happening fell through the floor. Wow, you must have solved the problem. Or you were right. Everybody was actually racist and sexist this whole time. Is that your version of evidence? Is that your version of reaching a solution to a problem? Really? How is this any different than having a difficult conversation with a company about their biases? This is exactly what you were talking about at the beginning that you said wasn't working. You didn't talk about the business case for this. You weren't talking about evidence and metrics. You're talking about anecdotal examples and accusations of bad thinking. How is that any different from what Starbucks did with their hour-long bias training? You say, oh, now we have a workshop where we tell the employees and the managers and the supervisors that this behavior is obviously racist. This behavior is obviously sexist, and we'll be watching. What do you think they're going to do? Whether they're racist or sexist or not. You've basically put a business rule onto their performance review process. And you still haven't even told us what you did to change the performance review form.
And so what we find is that we have helped over 100 companies actually make progress.
No, you haven't helped anything. You changed the code of conduct in companies. You accused entire companies of having systemic racism or sexism in place based on abstractions, based on anecdotes, based on your projection of bias onto everything. That's it. And consequently, in order to keep their jobs, in order to not be that problematic as you have defined someone in these companies who is, they have changed their behavior outwardly. Now, either that's a confession of wrongdoing, as it seems like you're saying it is, or there was no wrongdoing except that which you projected onto that behavior, but they want to keep their job, so it's really no heavy lifting for them to do something that says nothing about who they are, but what you want to see. Are you kidding? You chalk this up as a win? You chalk this up as a solution? Wow.
Towards their diversity goals.
Oh.
And there's growing evidence that these bias interrupters work.
Okay, you know, you're talking about evidence and metrics. All sounds very scientific. But here's a term that maybe you should you should think about. It's a term that you might find very comfortable with. It's called confirmation bias. If you go into a situation and you see that the population of the company is not in the demographic spread that you estimate to be diverse enough, if you go in saying to yourself, obviously there's bias here because the numbers don't add up to what we see as equitable, what we see as diverse and inclusive. And then you say what this company needs is bias interrupters because obviously there's bias. This is your method. Here is a statistical disparity between demographic A and demographic B. Obviously, the problem is bias between these two disparities or these two demographics. Since we already know what the problem is, the answer obviously is to disrupt that problem, which we know is the problem because there's a disparity based on aesthetics, not based on personal merit. Because us coming in and making assessments of a company based on the makeup of the skin tones and genitalia of those people there, no, we're not the racists and the sexists. No. They are. Because their aesthetics, their window dressing does not please us. So we're going to go through like the Spanish Inquisition. And as soon as they correct that problem, as soon as the outcomes become what we want them to become, obviously we solved the problem because obviously there was bias and we did away with it. Oh, we are the heroes. Let us build that straw man and tear him down. Look at us, the conquering heroes.
And the best thing about them is that they help every single group.
Demographic.
So in this company I've been talking about.
Yeah, the one that you won't tell us any information on, except it's a partnership. So is it a law firm or something?
In year 2, people of color, they got wildly more constructive feedback. It was like a 30% jump.
How do you measure constructive feedback? What constitutes constructive feedback? Do you attribute that jump to suddenly racism is gone? I mean, let's take it from our speaker's perspective for a moment. Okay, let's just believe her version of reality. By her own words, by her own estimates, she must have eliminated systemic racism from these companies, right? Her process, her method has purged these companies of systemic racism and systemic sexism. Right? I mean, everybody in that company now 100% of people of color in the company got leadership on their performance review. So she cured racism, right? Is she going to make that claim? Because that's what she says that she's done based on what she said before, right?
But white women, they got more constructive feedback too. And so did white men.
Why? What? So white men were not getting constructive feedback before? Well, why wouldn't they? I mean, of all the groups in that company, obviously the white man got all the praise, right? They got all the opportunities, right? They were given all the advancement opportunities and tools, right? Why would white men be getting constructive criticism now? They weren't before?
If you design your systems based on evidence, it's going to help every single group.
A, demographic. B, supposition. Not evidence. Supposition. You have not given us any examples of evidence-based research. You have taken anecdotal stories from selective individuals. You've gone into companies and you've made a supposition that the disparity in certain words being used or the disparity in certain percentages of people of this demographic or that demographic obviously indicates bias. Therefore, the solution is to prosecute for bias. And then you get the surface level outcomes that I guess are diametrically opposed to what you saw as the bias problem, and now the problem's solved. And you call that evidence. Okay.
So the bottom line, if you think about it.
Oh, I've been thinking about it for 13 minutes and 36 seconds.
Your systems and your culture, they reflect the people you've already hired.
Really? And my pause game is great today on the facial expressions. Really, the people I've already hired. What does that mean? What do you mean? The people I've already hired? Because in the context of what you've been talking about, apparently you can look at the visual makeup of a company's workforce and you know what their culture is? Is that it? Tell me again, who's the racist? Who's the sexist?
So if you want to replicate that workforce into the future, definitely keep on doing exactly what you're doing.
I'm not being condescending at all, because obviously you're not doing it the way that I want. You don't have the kinds of people in your company that I want. You're really winning me over, lady.
But if you don't,
if you're not racist, if you're not sexist,
if you actually want to make progress on diversity, equity, and inclusion, what we call DEI.
What we call DEI, but all of you racist and sexist peons have absolutely no idea about. You know, in this one exchange, exchange, so to speak, but in this one piece of her talk here, this condescension, this arrogance, this smugness, this my way or the highway, I can tell just by looking at your company whether or not you have a diverse and or inclusive and or progressive culture. It tells you quite a bit, doesn't it? Thank you, Frosted Glass. Starting to think post-op Woody Allen is full of it. All right, 30 seconds left.
My message to CEOs is reassuring. You already know what to do.
Oh.
Use standard business tools. Start from the evidence.
Evidence, right.
Gather metrics.
Metrics, right.
To establish baselines and measure progress, and keep at it until you achieve your goals. That's the new DEI playbook, and it works. Thank you.
Wow. Right, Dog Cat Fox? Wowie, wow, wow. I mean, I went into this honestly wondering, like, okay, it's probably going to be another round of nonsense, but maybe at least it'll give a different perspective on what DEI does in companies or what they do. Now, of course, like I said at the beginning, in order to offer a solution, you have to describe the problem. And she didn't describe the problem. She gave one example, Starbucks having bias workshops or something, or 1 hour of bias training. Okay, that's not a diversity and inclusion initiative in a company. That was a response, a PR response to a particular event several years ago. I thought that she would actually address what is actually currently being done in companies on the broad strokes of diversity and inclusion initiatives. I mean, she mentioned parts of it like ERGs or women's initiatives and things like that, but that just gives us the titles of things. She didn't talk about the inner workings or how they're failing, right? She gave one bad example, or I should say one good example of a bad attempt to solve a problem, the Starbucks 1 hour bias training thing. It was all for show. It didn't mean anything. And it was all a virtue signal. So on that basis, I'll agree sort of in spirit, but she then didn't tell us like what is wrong with ERGs, what is wrong with women initiatives, what is wrong with diversity and inclusion attempts. Give me a company example, an active example of a company that said, we're a diverse and inclusive company, and then didn't fail to meet their standards or their goals. You could have gone to Facebook, for example. I've done at least 1 or 2 videos on Facebook and Google, who in like 2014 said, we have this initiative to do XYZ PDQ to reach these diversity goals. And then you look at their, statistical results of their workforce 4 or 5 years later and how nothing has changed. The percentage of demographic A and demographic B are effectively exactly the same as they were 4 years back. Well, how did they fail? I thought they were all supposed to be diverse and inclusive in everything. What are they doing wrong? Are they a sexist company? Are they a racist company? Well, she didn't even talk about those obvious and public examples. So she didn't tell us what the problem was with current DEI initiatives. All right, well, if you don't tell us what the problem is, how can you tell us a solution? Well, let's ignore that. Let's look at her solution. Her solution was a witch hunt. Her solution was a rhetorical semantic witch hunt. If you're not using the right words, if you're using words here, there, or otherwise, and that's it. On performance reviews, the words that end up on performance reviews, that's your big solution? And the methodology by which you went about doing that is somehow genius? Why didn't she say she cured racism in those companies? Why didn't she say she cured sexism? She got the outcome she wanted, right? So the problem must have been solved. She said the problem was solved, but did she declare that racism systemically was gone in that company? Or that sexism was systemically gone in that company? No. Why not? Did she prove it was there to begin with? No. But apparently the outcome that she got proves that she's right. Thank you, Chicago Mike. At work and unable to listen. Have a listen later. Also, hi, Scribe. Hi, Mike. All right. Well, anyway, let's go to the bingo card. I've babbled on enough about this and, as they say, beaten the dead horse. So here's the card as I have it right now. Let me go over it one time. Hold off on your arguments for any more squares to be circled. We might get there. Collectivizes own demographic. Well, she did talk about white women. And if nothing else, our speaker is certainly a white woman. So I'm going to circle that one. Childhood or family anecdote. She never talked about herself or her childhood or her family. So can't circle that one. Plays victim. She wasn't taking a position as a victim of this. She didn't talk about her own experiences. So her not referring to herself in this is, it's going to be a tough one to prove to me. So I can't say she played the victim. She was being more like the messenger than a victim here. Contradicts own point or argument. Yeah. her argument about evidence-based, et cetera, and then offering us absolutely no actual evidence of anything. Yeah, circling that one. Let's see, patriarchy. She did talk about male-dominated this, that, and the other all over the place, white men, and so on. So, yep, I'll circle that one too. By implication, if not by specificity. Weightless example. Did she give us any examples? I mean, okay, and just before anybody else says, I already circled anecdote that probably never happened for that story as a whole. I'm not going to use that as a weightless example because it was as abstract as everything else. So was there an example? I mean, everything was technically weightless because she didn't give us any information. Actually, you know what? I take it back. The 100% outcome of leadership appearing on every black person's or every person of color's performance review the next year doesn't prove anything. That just proves that all you did was make people fearful of not putting that word on the performance review. But you cited as some kind of success. Doesn't prove anything. So yeah, weightless example. Boy, oh boy, we're on the edge here. Wage gap. Did she talk about pay? I mean, she talked about opportunities. Oh, and see, this would be a bingo. So I got to put a lot of, I'm going to leave that one uncircled for now. If you guys have an argument, hold on to it just for a minute. Feminism. Yes, because she brought up some of the tenets of much of the feminism, black feminism, the disparity of opportunities, maternity leave, and so on. Those aren't inherently feminist stuff, but she focused heavily on women in this and the workplace. So I'm gonna, and the boys club and being underestimated and on. So I'm circling that one. Marginalization. Did she use the words marginalized? I don't think so. I know you could say, oh, well, in aggregate, etc., but I want to leave a little bit for discussion here, so I'm going to leave that there. Word salad. Okay, somebody saying something that ends up being nonsense is not necessarily word salad. I understood what she was saying, even if she contradicted herself. That was the whole contradicts own pointer argument. The whole evidence thing and on. But word salad, like just babble for the sake of babble? I don't know. Okay, self-vilification or wretchedness. Nope, she never made herself the villain in this. She was the hero. She was the one pointing out all the problems and offering the solution. So, yeah, make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. I'm going to circle that one. You know why? Because throughout her entire argument, it was that non-white, non-male individuals are all the ones on the receiving end. But then she says that even white males experience this, which means that it's not a racial thing. It's not inherently a sex thing. It's a people thing. So in a way, most of her arguments about race and or gender in this were thrown out the door as soon as she told us that it does happen to the demographics that she's dismissed as being the ones in control of everything. So yeah, I'm circling that one. And lastly, attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase. I'm going to circle it. You know why? Because of the 5 stages or 5 types of bias. That in and of itself, that whole schematic that she used in all these companies and everything else, that's her method. That's her theory. This is how reality works. That in and of itself is a new buzzword, buzz phrase. And do you see what we have? Do you see what we have? Do you see?
Bingo.
What?
Of course!
Ooh, that's a bingo.
Right?
Yeah!
double bingo. Oh my God. Double bingo, everyone. I think a fair result so far. But I've done my review of the card. Now it's on to you. If you have arguments for squares yet to be circled, and they better be good ones, because just about everything here would lead to another bingo or two, depending. Put your suggestions or arguments in the comments now. If it's convincing enough to me and or the collective of us, I shouldn't say collective, you know what I mean. Us pals, us friends, us compatriots. Maybe we'll get another bingo or two. Be sure to tag me with my, at Scribelight in your comments so I can see it amongst everything else, because my attention span. Man alive, after that. Let's see. Any squares yet to be circled? If you have an argument, now's the time. Let's see. Something else is a programming note. I'm going to try, and I underscore the word try, I'm going to try to cut down on the TEDx's as frequently as I've done them. I've gotten a little antsy about how much I've leaned on this format, which don't get me wrong, I enjoy it, obviously, to make content for my channel. I feel a need to get back to more scripted stuff or to other topics. So I'm going to attempt to do no more than 2 of these a week. I can't say what particular days. Real life butts in all the time, but no more than 2. And if I have my druthers, whittle it down to 1. Make it a special event on a weekly basis. We'll see if I can stick to that, because I do like these things. I do find myself drawn to titles of things that catch my brain. But that's sort of a little programming note. I have a couple of videos that I want to take a look at for scripted stuff. I've already done a recent one on immigration policy. I'll have probably another one out about education here in a couple of days. So just as an aside, as I wait for arguments to come in. Slapper360, no word salad. Like I say, she was talking a lot of abstract stuff, but I understood what she was saying. At no point did it feel like, to me at least, that she just started babbling incoherent buzz phrases. And I know there were a lot of buzz phrases in this, but I never got that sense, reflexively, so that's why I didn't circle it. So if you have an argument for a word salad portion or something within that would count, let me know. Texas Attorney General, secret agent, are you cool if we send you cringe-worthy vids? You can send them to me, I guess. I can't promise I'll make content out of them. I guess it depends on what it is. If you want to tweet me something or say, hey, look at this. I mean, a lot of people do that one way or the other. And it's a rare day where I end up turning that into content necessarily, depending on what it is, but you can. Mike Savage, both wage gap and marginalization were both strongly implied several times. I know they were strongly implied, but as fate would have it, those 2 squares will give us bingos. And so the bar to jump to argue to me that it actually happened within the talk becomes that much more difficult. Okay, I just for the sacredness of the bingo card, I can't just start handing them out, especially at the end here, just for the sake of getting bingo. So, and as you all know, I have been argued into circling things that I wasn't sure about many times in the past. So if you have a good argument, if you have a good example, but for this sake, aggregate might not cut it. Might not. All depends. Give me your argumentation and we'll see. Asian Hippie, it was good to watch yesterday's video, Scribelight. Thank you, Asian Hippie. I just thought, like I say, I've been doing the TEDx thing for about a year now. And I thought, new year, I should probably try to return back a little bit to the center, so to speak, as to my usual content. And so I wanted to force myself to do that. So setting a limit on TEDx's and sort of mentally allowing myself more time to work on other things, I hope will change that. Nathaniel Taylor, Scribelight wage gap. She focuses on leadership positions because she knows that's where the money is. Yeah, but she didn't talk about disparities in pay. That's the thing. It's like if she talked about if she brought up that example of like the two engineers, right? The lady and the guy, and that she pointed something out. If she'd also talked about how this lady made less money than her male counterpart with the exact same qualification, I'd say wage gap. She didn't even give that kind of example. Leadership positions is more of a status thing, is sort of a value of the person thing. She was talking about different demographics being valued differently in the hierarchy of the company, but she never brought up pay or pay disparities. She brought up disparities in, I don't know, respect or perspective. Unless if I missed something or it went over my head because I was brainwashed with everything else. But yeah, like I say, I'm going to hold the standard pretty high. We already got a double bingo, so it's not like we're losing out. Mike Savage, anecdote? No. Well, no, she gave you the anecdote that never happened, or probably never happened. The one with the lady who pointed out an error. Her department gave her so much negative feedback that she decided to just cower in the corner and bring cupcakes every day. Yeah. Plays victim? No. Self-vilification? No. Yeah, the plays victim and self-vilification, you're not going to be able to, there's nothing about that talk or her attitude that's going to make me think that she was anywhere in those territories at all. So I think those are kind of routed out. Word salad, marginalization, maybe, but I'm going to need a good argument for those. Asan, if there was no marginalization, then there would not be the need to implement DEI programs, at least according to her thinking. Well, I mean, you're right.
Bingo. What? Of course!
Triple bingo. Now you're right. You're right. Given everything that was given, the reason for the talk, her whole reason for being as apparently a research company or a consulting firm or something. Yeah, no, you got me. Triple bingo. And given the remaining squares, and again, she never brought up herself, so childhood or family anecdote doesn't count. Plays victim, no way. Self-vilification or wretchedness, Word salad, again, she might have been talking nonsense, but what she said was not nonsensical, if that makes any distinction to you. Wage gap, again, if there was something there, but she wasn't talking about pay disparity. She's talking about demographic disparity. She's talking about outcome disparity as far as like respect and or perception and or assessment. And yeah, you could say, the different jobs, different careers have different pay scales, et cetera. That's true. But again, she never dwelled on money or economy or anything else. So I think that's where we're at, guys. And that's not anything to sneeze at. Triple bingo. And I honestly can say I am disappointed. I'm very disappointed. Not because it was another brain-melting TEDx, but because honestly, I thought that even if it was another bundle of ideological nonsense, there would actually be some useful and insightful information if she decided to compare and contrast what actually happens in companies versus her solution. But she didn't at all. And so in that sense, I was disappointed I didn't learn something new. But them's the breaks when it comes to TEDx. And I'm going to call it there, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this one. It was a bit of a slog, wasn't it? Well, it's just another day that ends in Y. If you'd like to hear more from me or Satsu 2 Cents or the Ranting Monkey, you can find all three of us tonight on the Ranting Monkeys channel at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for the Lords of the Night, where we will talk about the news of the day, news stories you submit, what we've been up to on the internet, and then your questions and comments. Everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for your attendance. Thank you so much for your participation and argumentation. And everybody who donated, thank you so much for your generosity. I really do appreciate it. I hope everyone is safe and well If you're not well, please get well soon. And as always, I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.